Hello and welcome. This is your host, DrPND, and we are doing your Health Reclaim podcast. So I know we have been absent for a little bit, but we've been working on a lot of good stuff for you guys. So anyway, today I'm returning with another podcast, and we are going to be talking about a very common issue that I've dealt with for the last 27 years, honestly, on a regular basis with my clients, and that is the 8 most common signs and symptoms that you are under eating. And that is correct. I actually said under eating, not overeating, which a lot of people are usually surprised to hear that. But they're by no means not exhaustive signs and symptoms, but these are the absolute most common ones that I've personally have encountered throughout my career extremely often and on a regular basis. So we're going to dive in a little bit deep today. I'll try to make it as fast as possible and not going to, of course, too much detail on each one. But one of the things that people don't understand is that if you're not eating enough, especially a high nutrient dense healthy diet that does not have adequate caloric intake for the day, a lot of times it can be the root cause of a lot of health problems. And a lot of those health problems that we're going to go over are very, seemingly inconsequential or unrelated, but they very easily could be the case. So let's go ahead and see how you guys can find out how to recognize the signs and symptoms of undereating and what can we do about it. So not eating enough has its own set of consequences, again, including trouble falling, staying asleep, losing weight, lowered immunity and thyroid function, hormonal dysregulation, and a lot of other things that are associated with that. In our modern society, with its seemingly endless supply of fast food and junk foods, it obviously seems all very obvious to most that while we're dealing with an obesity epidemic, and again, all those junk and processed, highly processed and refined foods are obviously very nutrient lacking, but are very high calorie dense as far. So they're cheap, they're very low quality. And this is what most people eat, and again, that's why we have this obesity epidemic that is increasing every year. There's no honestly any inclination or even the bleak hope of diminishing anytime soon. But what is not obvious a lot of times is how people really don't eat enough, and that does include those folks who really eat also processed food, and I'll explain here in a little bit why. So the undereating issue is more of a problem, generally speaking, more of a problem with the people that are into health, wellness, and fitness. Okay, that I just want to make clear. They're not, the issue of undereating is not so much really found in obviously folks that are morbidly obese and sedentary, do not exercise. These people have other issues, and that is from malnutrition, meaning they lack severe amount of micronutrients like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and so forth, because of the tremendous amount of processed foods that they eat and the virtually low to no quality food that they do not eat on a daily basis. But when it comes to the undereating, most of the time, the issues that I see are those people that are into the health and wellness and especially the fitness community in general. And we definitely have started seeing a massive increase since the inception of CrossFit and the popularization of CrossFit. And don't get me wrong, CrossFit is not the fault of that, but just as fitness in general increased, and those types of training protocols and intense workouts with the social media pushing unrealistic images of people being what we call jacked and tanned, extremely low body fat, a six-pack that walk around year round, which is unrealistic for 99.99% of the population. This is the big cause, I believe, of what has really spun this over dieting, over under eating, and just general over exercising issue. Which the over exercising aspect, that's a whole other video I'm going to do eventually. So the problem with the under eating, again, it's quite common, a lot more common than people think. So while most people would find it hard to believe that many of the health problems people experience, when going on a calorie restricted healthy diet, healthy quote unquote, are from lack of calories and micronutrients, and micronutrients at the same time. That this is it's very true. A lot of people do have a hard time accepting that, but I see it in my practice many times, as I said before, and the health problems that come with that, or have come with that, are definitely something that I really hope that people pay attention to this podcast, because again, I cannot overemphasize how many times issues can be resolved by just strictly optimizing healthy caloric intake for the day. Okay, so one of the things I want to share is, like, I've seen clients who, for example, couldn't lose weight. They were suddenly able to do so, lose good amount of body fat after realizing they were not eating enough calories. I mean, they were actually end up increasing their food intake, especially high quality food intake. Quite the opposite of the calories in and calories out mentality, which is, I've always spoken against that. Okay. So the valid questions arises here, obviously, why is under eating, so common? So it happens for a number of reasons, but here are the most common ones that I see, throughout the year in and year out, honestly. One of them is chronic dieting. Again, people are so obsessed with image, and everybody's almost always on some kind of diet, whether they are doing a paleo, a keto diet, different kinds of ketogenic diets, a Mediterranean diet, some kind of detox, cleanse, whatever it might be. It boils down to chronic, literally dieting, and what I call over dieting. A lot of times I see also people with restricted diets due to self-imposed food restrictions, which might or might not have no validity behind it. Obviously, food allergies and food sensitivities. Food sensitivity is a big one. I see that quite a bit, and rightfully so. But what ends up happening is those people don't really know how to replace the food sensitivities, the foods that are causing those sensitivities, with foods that are good for them to eat, or at least temporarily, while they are able to reset their sensitivities. So that causes another big issue. Another one is the overexercise, above average activity level, which now that's, again, if you have a job, most likely most of us are not going to have an above average activity level, because most of us work in an air conditioned, nice, relaxed place, in our city, most of the time, half the time at least. But if you have a above average activity level, which is almost always due to over exercising, okay, that's going to be a big one, right? So technically, they'll do what I see a lot is they'll calculate, or even have a professional calculate the basal metabolic rate, and they'll get prescribed, this is your minimum amount of calories they should be ingesting, and they meet that and then some quite well. But what they don't count is the overactivity from exercise, particularly that they engage in, and those chronically creating those great caloric deficits. Another one is stress. That's a big one I see again, and it's multifactorial, right? So you can stress your body from over dieting, you can stress your body from restricting yourself from again, food choices, too much exercise, not enough sleep, and so forth. But that's a good, that's a really, really big one, and pretty much any of the other ones is almost always is going to have the stress component in it. So it doesn't have to be any of those reasons alone. A lot of times it can be actually multiple of those reasons in the person. Another one I see a lot is fear of certain foods. Again, the food groups. The FODMAPs was a big one for a while. The were nightshade families. Again, with a lot of times without any merit whatsoever. Another one is busyness, which the busyness is almost always accompanied by stress, right? People are just way too busy. They go, do. And a lot of them, high stress, constant adrenaline output. and they don't eat, and then when they do eat, they don't eat enough, or they'll pay out and eat, obviously, almost always bad choices. And another one, which is very valid, and that's something that has to be very carefully considered and very well respected, is pregnancy and breastfeeding. So when you're pregnant, I mean, you're growing another human being inside your body. So the caloric demand and nutrient demand is insane, skyrockets. If you look at, history throughout cultures in the world, indigenous populations, a lot of them took great care in preparing the mother for pregnancy, even before she got pregnant, let alone while she was pregnant. It wasn't too long ago that, a staple recommendation now is taking folate with a multivitamin for a pregnant woman because of, spina bifida. Something that costs a couple of cents a day, a vitamin, cheap vitamin. Who knew they can prevent, spina bifida? But so there's many examples, obviously, aside from that. But pregnancy and breastfeeding is extremely important. And you have to be, that's something that has very careful attention, has to be paid for that. So could sample, something as simple as undereating be causing health problems? Well, it very well could be. Let's find out. Could inadequate food intake be the reason why, your diet, suddenly isn't working, anymore? Or your rapid weight loss diet plan is the reason why your shirts and your jeans and your clothes in generally, are not getting looser as they should be. So let's go, to the signs and symptoms of undereating. Remember, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the most common ones that I see. So that's what I want to talk about. All right. So the first one is your weight. Okay, you try to lose weight, is not budging. Okay. And this is one of the most paradoxical symptoms of someone who is undereating. And I cannot tell you how often this is. And this is one of the absolutely hardest one to get across to people, because they'll fight you with tooth and nail. They, come up and tell you every single excuse why this is not the case, but they're just absolutely terrified of, gaining more weight. And yeah, they're not budging. So that's a tough one to get across people. So it often goes hand in hand, honestly, with overeating. And women in general, again, this is a generalized statement, in my practice, I've seen usually suffer with that more than men for whatever reason, don't know, but I see that. And why it goes hand in hand, because they what they'll do is they'll undereat in general throughout the day, and then they'll overeat usually at night. When I say overeat, I'm not talking about overeating in calories to meet the caloric demand for the day. They actually overeat per that meal. And when they overeat, as I stated earlier, this is the reason why they're usually something unhealthy or partly healthy, and they'll go in and binge on ice cream, cookies, and other highly processed refined foods, because they're just absolutely starving. So I see that quite a bit. Or they'll do is they'll sell themselves on the cheat day, and they'll have that cheat day almost every other day, which doesn't work like that. So you might be surprised to hear that. I've rarely worked with a weight loss client who was blatantly overeating. Okay, what I mean by that is somebody who is literally eating to oblivion. We see those folks. That is something that I realized a long time ago. These people need professional help. And that's a psychological aspect I'm talking about. And there is the folks that are, 350, 400 plus, sometimes 500-600 pounds. So those people, not only, these are severely morbidly obese folks that are just huge. And they not only are addicted to processed food severely, but they also are in a sense gluttonous towards those foods, that they just sit there and actually eat and eat and eat. And you can, look at YouTube videos, you can see studies. Early in my career, I had experiences with those folks, and it took me a while to understand and recognize that it's purely emotional, mental problem that manifested itself for whatever reason. And that has to be addressed in either a very drastic, sometimes surgical way, like bariatric surgeries or anything like that. That I'm not a fan of. I don't like, but that's just the reality that has taken place. And all those people have to go through, some very intense counseling and so forth. So I'm not talking about those people, just if you're wondering. But I'm talking about the regular, person who just might be overweight. They might be technically morbidly obese based on a clinical setting standard. But these are the folks that I'm talking about. The majority of people. So many, believe it or not, actually, when my clients that come to me over the years, a lot of them have been on actually extremely low calorie diets, anywhere from 500, 600, 700 to maybe 1200, depending on if they're male, female, how big they are and so forth. Combined oftentimes with 6 to 7 days per week of intense training. It can be cardio, weight training, and cardio, both. Again, from 2010, CrossFit started coming along very heavily, so a lot of those folks started doing CrossFit, which can be very, very high intensity, very demanding, exercise protocols. And I've seen, like a lot. And they don't budge, they don't go anywhere. And that is for a good reason. They're extremely frustrated, that their weight isn't changing. And for some of these people, their weight hasn't actually been increasing since they even dropped their food intake and started working out more. Many of these clients are also eating almost always a very low carbohydrate diet with the goal of losing the weight even more quickly. We've been trying to believe that the body is a machine, right? That we can input and output calories in a way that is mathematically, staple. It's basically law, right? It's calories in equals calories out. That's your concern. And it's simple as that. And that is not as simple as that at all. And never has. If that was the case, then nobody would be struggling with weight and everybody can be burning stuff out, and burning the calories that exist in excess. And that is not the case. It's not the case at all. So, it is understandable why these people will expect to see those rapid weight loss in a significantly restricted deficits like that. But the fact is, they simply can't lose the weight, or they'll have a good initial result, and a lot of times most of these water, and of course some depending how heavy they were, depending on their activity level, but they might come in, they're 100 pounds overweight. They might lose 20 pounds in the first 2 weeks, which most of that is water. And they might lose another 20 or 30, pounds, depending, 40 even, of, body fat over the next 6 to 8 months. And they just, after they just get stuck. They just can't go anywhere. And just those last 15, 20, 30 pounds, whatever it might be, they just can't lose it. If anything, a lot of sometimes they'll actually start gaining weight, in different ways, especially water retention. And it doesn't matter how much they exercise, how many times they cut the calories off. And why is this? Well, for a short term, moderate caloric deficit can lead to definitely sustainable weight loss. Okay. And that's something that the body's comfortable with. It can, handle, at least for a period of time. But much larger deficits, especially when done very intense, very aggressively and abruptly, these changes will induce, these caloric changes will induce changes actually in your own body metabolism in order to keep your body in a homeostatic balance. Your body does not like major drastic changes. Okay, it will make modifications to your thyroid, adrenal, and endocrine hormones very quickly in order to reduce your overall caloric output. Now, what's called downgrading or downregulating the metabolic output. You're slowing down your metabolism. That's what ultimately boils down. I think a lot of people learned a good lesson with the advent of the HCG and the B12 diets when they came in 2006, 2007, become extremely popular. If you guys remember those, you went in, you got HCG shots, you got prescribed fentromethazine, which is basically a methamphetamine-based stimulant and appetite suppressor, and you got your B12 shots, and they put you on like a 500, 600 calorie diet a day. And initially, people had great success. People lost all sorts of weight. That the long run, they had other problems that they ran into, which I'm not going to go into. But they did a great job. Of course, they get off the medication because you can't stay on the medication for more than 6 to 9 months. And after that, the appetite came back, the body tried to auto-regulate, and it did. And they started eating like vacuum cleaners again. And next thing you know, a lot of those people gain a lot of their weight back. Some actually end up gaining more weight back. Then you start seeing the second cycle of same people going back to the doctor, back to the program, getting on the fentromethazine, B12 and HCG, and then having very mediocre at best results to the point that a lot of people would barely even budge anything. Why? Because what they did is they drastically reduced their caloric intake. They stressed their body out severely. They caused damage in their endocrine hormone production. They stressed out their adrenal glands, their thyroid functioned, drastically downregulated. And the body adapted. Also, this is the body's defense mechanism to adapt to biological drastic, homeostatic changes. So what he did, the body fought him. And he would not let that happen again. He learned the stress, he learned this lesson. I said, not a problem. If you're going to put me through something like that again, I'm going to severely and very quickly downregulate my metabolic output and rate, and I'm not going to lose the weight. And sure enough, exactly that's what happened. A lot of people could never lose the weight that they lose before. Some barely lost any weight, period. And even though, of course, some of the diehards, they kept going back and back and back for a few years, in learning. And I cannot tell you back in 2008, 2009, when those diets started to run their course and people started catching on that this, you cannot repeat that. I can't tell you how many clients we had that I had to literally rebuild from scratch in order for them to get back on track, optimize their metabolism, return them back to normal, and then slowly but surely get them on a steady, healthy weight loss, what I like to call fat loss protocol that was permanent and sustainable, for a long time to come, and for the rest of their lives, as long as they kept up with it. But, point being is your body will fight you, and I don't care who you are, you can do all the biohacking you want, take all the hormones and drugs you want, you're not going to never outsmart your body. It's not going to happen. The body will fight you, and it will win every single time. I promise you that. So again, these changes, they'll always include the reduction and activity of thyroid hormones, shutting down sex hormone production, raising the stress hormone like cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline. Chronically elevated cortisol, for example, over time will lead to both leptin and insulin resistance, which is the absolute hallmark of many metabolic diseases. But in this case, is the hallmark of inability to lose body fat and or gaining actual additional unwanted body fat, which obviously is going to have a disastrous scenario for most people. So these hormonal changes can really lead, to a stalled weight loss, and body fat retention, and sometimes body fat accumulation, along with many, many other negative health side effects that go beyond weight loss resistance, as I said before. And actually, if you listen, the other 7 signs and symptoms, a lot of those were caused, believe it or not, by these severe restrictive diets and undereating and so forth. Anyway, so eating much less and exercising much more, this is a futile attempt to lose weight. Consider whether this strategy has been working for you or not. It's really that simple. Step back, be honest with yourself. If you've been going for last year, exercising like crazy, and you've been dieting like crazy, and yet nothing is changing, especially if you're losing muscle mass and not body fat mass, you're definitely going the wrong direction. And it comes to a point that you have to be, honest with yourself and take responsibility. So anyway, let's move on to number 2. That's a big one that I see, and I work with folks, depending on the severity of the problem. Sometimes I'll have to refer out if I don't believe I can handle that. But the second sign and symptom is that women cannot get pregnant. Okay, that is a very big problem, believe it or not. And obviously, there's a lot of other factors that play into that. But after many testing, after thorough analysis by their obstetrician, gynecology, other physicians, medical history, so forth. I've done testing. Well, a lot of times you see a patterns or some degree of over dieting, under eating, and they just cannot get pregnant. So scientists have really known for a long time that low-calorie dieting and inadequate body fat, can lead to infertility and amenorrhea in women. Just one of the most commonly seen manifestations of this problem, and it's known as the hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is basically a hallmark by menstrual regularity of amenorrhea and low energy availability with or without eating disorder. A lot of times you will see eating disorders, and if I catch that, I'm referring that out by default. I don't do that, and it's sad. A lot of times those women suffer, and the outcome sometimes permanently cannot be good. But anyway, so menstrual irregularity doesn't necessarily mean a missed period. It can simply mean a woman is having a anovulatory cycle, and basically there's no egg released during the ovulation period. So hypothalamic amenorrhea is caused by chronic caloric deprivation, and is also associated with physiological changes like hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPTS axis overactivity, also is known as adrenal fatigue. A lot of people talk about adrenal fatigue. That's what it is. And disturbances in the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis, also known as what's called euthyroid 6 syndrome. So you have the HPA and you have the HPT. So a lot of times people say HPTA, which is a hypothalamic pituitary thyroid adrenal axis. But either way, you're causing hormonal dysregulation at a great lengths here. So that is something that you have to keep in mind. There's a lot of other factors involved. It can get pretty complicated, but I just want to give you that possibility, that because I've seen it, my colleagues have seen it. I had a good friend of mine. She's a emergency surgeon. She does abdominal thoracic surgery in the hospitals. I can't tell you how many times she'll come to say, like, I these CrossFit women coming in, they look like Greek goddesses with 6 or 8 packs. They're just muscular and tight and fit. She goes, they just have had their periods for a year, 2, 3 years. They can't get pregnant, severe constipation, just on and on, so many problems. It's not even funny. And you see that back in the day, we used to see that with women bodybuilders when they'll get so lean for bodybuilding shows. In that, aside from steroid use, obviously, even natural competitions, they'll get such a severe caloric restriction that just the appearance will disappear. They'll just feel horrible. Constipation set in because the thyroid gets affected. But when it comes to pregnancy, just keep that in mind. If you're a overly overachiever, exerciser, somebody who exercises a lot, overdiets a lot, young, you want to get pregnant, think about that's a very good possibility that a big part of that is, or if not the part, that you cannot get pregnant. So moving on, we're going to go to number 3. Your blood sugar is a roller coaster. So while many people blame excessive carbohydrate consumption for wild blood sugar swings, you might be actually surprised to learn that inadequate calorie consumption can cause just as many issues with blood sugar control. The most common issues that comes from chronic undereating is hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar. Hypoglycemia is technically defined as when you have your blood sugar is below 70 milligrams per deciliter of blood. Though some people experience symptoms at a lot higher blood sugar levels. It varies, but this is generally the accepted limit. And common symptoms of hypoglycemia include the following: hunger, obviously, shakiness, anxiety, dizziness, sweating, weakness, confusion, changes in mood. Think somebody who's hangry. They're angry, they're hungry, and they're very extremely irritable. And it can propagate to different intensities with different people. Severe undereating can easily cause hypoglycemia, especially when combined with exercise. It's just a recipe for disaster. And because many people feel better eating sugary foods when they're hypoglycemic, this can also lead to the common cycle of high and low blood sugar swings that cause chronic dieters, to overeat or binge on junk foods. Okay. Again, this is yet another reason that the most, sustainable diet for weight loss provides always going to provide, adequate calories to keep your hormones and your blood sugar, even, even killed. That's just a fact. Okay. So, number 3, again, blood sugar is a roller coaster. You almost always are going to have a, issue of some kind of, under eating. It can be, local or deprivation. You said quite a bit. Number 4, we're going to move on to is your mood is totally unpredictable. So we mentioned hangry just now. Well, what exactly is that? It is a state of, actually defined as the state of anger and irritability resulting from being hungry. And even though it's kind of a made up term, which is, satiric almost, people always say that. But since the brain requires blood sugar to function optimally, when it starts to drop, one of the first cognitive processes that suffers is self-control. So your ability to exert self-control allows you to focus your attention, regulate your emotions, kind of cope with stress better, resist impulsivity, refrain from aggressive behavior. And when you're hungry, all of those above mentioned literally go out the window. And, you see that in traffic, you see that in, people that you know. So, it's funny, but sometimes can lead to disastrous consequences, if you guys know. So if you're always on a short fuse or your mood is constantly swinging between cheerful and irritable or anxious, make sure that you're not severely under eating before making any other significant changes to your diet and supplement or medication schedules and routines. Quick note, by the way, people that drink a lot of caffeine throughout the day, and especially a lot in the morning, and do not eat, okay, they do fasting, intermittent fasting, they'll usually experience those situations quite a bit, okay? In addition, after they eat finally, okay, after they break their fast, their energy crashes afterwards hard, and they're almost like comatose for about, an hour or two, or sometimes more. Pay attention to that. So if you're fasting and you drink a lot of coffee, pay attention to what happens when you get up in the morning, you drink coffee, usually for the time being, the first cup or 2, maybe 3, you're kind of feeling good if you keep that drip supply going constantly. You're going to hit your dopamine levels good, and you're going to feel good. And then after a while, you're going to start feeling the irritability kicking in. Because coffee will raise cortisol, which in turn will raise noradrenaline, and it will cause gluconeogenesis. Your blood, your liver to produce blood sugar because your blood sugar drops, and that again is going to start making swings in blood sugar regulation. But pay attention and see how you do. If might be a better idea for you to hydrate well in the morning, maybe have 1 cup of coffee soon after eat. Let your food digest a little bit, and then have your other cup of coffee. But if you're having those massive swings and severe irritability, like you're high, you're feeling good, and then an hour later you want to kill somebody, you're extremely irritable, you're crashing your blood sugar. Okay, that's just a guarantee. So this is just a little bit of a FYI, saying you can put into practice starting tomorrow. Number 5, we're going to go into that is big one. You can't fall asleep or actually stay asleep. Okay. Insomnia and sleep disturbances are obviously one of the top health complaints, in our society, and I see that with my clients all the time. There's no doubt about it. They come from for help with that, and these are almost always part of the problem. I'm trying to resolve with people, but this is especially common in perimenopausal women who seem to be especially prone to poor sleep despite generally good sleep hygiene and health-conscious lifestyle. Okay. And why I don't know. But oddly enough, one of the first symptoms that changes when, again, my clients eating a more calorically appropriate, balanced, nutrient-rich diet is improvement in sleep and sleep duration and quality. So that's, again, it's huge. A lot of times you've seen, a lot of times actually people that take antidepressants like SSRIs, a lot of times I'll advise them to take that medication early in the day as opposed to before bed, because why I don't know, but it would affect blood sugar sometimes, and quite often actually, or people see a drastic improvement in the medication being able to work better when they balance their blood sugars. Coincidence or not, I don't know, but this is a fact that I've noticed quite a bit. So let's see here. Waking up hungry, many of the people find that increased caloric intake, especially from carbohydrates, actually can lead them to fall asleep faster and stop waking up at night. One of the quick ways that I'll tell you right now, it's a phenomenal solution, usually helps a lot, is to eat a healthy, dense carbohydrate meal before bed. Okay, it can be just fruit. It can be like a cup of fruit, like a banana, an apple, with maybe a little bit of nut butter or something you like, or just a healthy carbohydrate rich dinner, something like yams, sweet potatoes, organic steamed white rice, with your meal. And you will notice that almost always you're going to sleep better. Okay. One of the reasons also with males that I see quite a bit is if they, again, caloric restriction, or they don't eat carbs at night, they're really focused on losing body weight, body fat, and that was very low carbohydrates and no carbohydrate at night whatsoever. They will actually end up waking up more. And that is also because they are not retaining water and the body is actually purging the water. So they end up having to pee. So even though that's not disturbing their sleep directly, it is making them get up to urinate. And that in and of itself is going to have consequences, obviously, on your sleep. So if sleep is essential, that's priority. And you can never go wrong with optimizing and prioritizing sleep. So if above all else, put in a good carbohydrate meal, maybe like a good fruit right before bed, okay, and then see how that works for you. A lot of times that'll make a massive difference in the ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. So one of the things that the reasons is most likely that the improved blood sugar control that arises from the appropriate calories and carbohydrate intake. Okay, so as your blood sugar drops overnight, as I said before, your liver must release stored glucose in the form of glycogen, okay, to keep your body's blood sugar steady. So if you're constantly under eating, especially if you're over exercising, again, that's a theme we talked about. On top of that, your liver won't have the glycogen stores it needs to promote gluconeogenesis, or the release and making of glucose to keep your blood sugar stable. And that is the gluconeogenesis, basically the process of creating new glucose, which your liver does very efficiently if you can. So if these stress hormones elevate high enough, they will actually wake you up in the middle of the night because it causes cortisol spike. So make sure that you're eating enough overall, and potentially including a carb and a good healthy fat dense bedtime snack, before bed, or at least if you're having dinner, make sure that you eat healthy enough protein and fats, even if you're not eating carbohydrates. Because I do have people that don't want to eat carbohydrates at night for whatever reason. Then make sure that you're eating good quality protein and a good healthy source of fat. Okay, so something like salmon, grass-fed beef, along with good olive oil, throw some fresh guacamole and avocado in there. That right there is a lot of good protein and healthy fat that is going to help you keep the blood sugar a lot more stable. Even if you don't eat the carbohydrates. Some people will have to eat carbohydrates. If that's the case, add a good carb source to that. And again, if you want to even go further, add a little bit of fruit right before you go to bed. Okay, as like a pre-bed snack. So a lot of people will ask me, what are good snacks throughout the day? Because sometimes snacking throughout the day, it can make a difference in stabilizing blood sugar for some people, not everybody, but some. And that also includes, but I always tell them is, good nuts, seeds, veggies, and fruits, like veggies with hummus and, some kind of nut butter that is sugar-free, obviously. And healthy cold cuts, just, rolling up some, roast beef from Boar's Head brand with, like some veggies and hummus and a handful of nuts is easy, practical, and quick. You can eat that on the go, but it does a great job in keeping your blood sugar stable. And again, the fruit before bed, that's something that really can work well to help you really sleep. it does help serotonin production, to elevate the serotonin levels. So it's just a good all around practice. Try it out and see how it works for you. All right, moving on. Number 6, you are chronically constipated. Okay, so this is not going to be pertinent to people who have IBD, okay, inflammatory bowel disease, and severe IBS, because those people almost always are going to have severe diarrhea issues. But the constipation is the issue actually with the thyroid. So let me kind of go into that. There are a few reasons why chronic undereating can cause constipation, and the most obvious is that obviously feces is made up of waste matter from the digestion of food. So if you're not getting enough food, your stool won't have much bulk to it. And if you're eating low carbohydrate diet, by default, you're going to be cutting your fiber because you're taking off some vegetables and you're taking out pretty much all food, which that's the biggest source of fiber. That's just it's a simple math, right? It's a simple fact here that you can do. So the less obvious, but a lot more likely reason that undereating will lead to constipation is the effects of undernutrition on your thyroid hormones. As I discussed previously, undereating causes a downregulation of T3, okay? That is the active form of the thyroid hormone. This will lead to a condition called euthyroid 6 syndrome, where your T3 is low, but reverse T3 is high, and thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, and the T4 are actually often normal. So in this condition, your body will develop hypothyroidism symptoms without necessarily showing any changes in the thyroid function markers in the panels that most doctors check. A lot of doctors check with just TSH, which again, that can be easily normal. It will be normal. Or they might plug in a T4, which that too will be normal. And by default, they're going to miss any issues that you're actually having. And then you go on home with a prescription with some kind of laxative or something to loosen up the stool, and not really addressing the root cause of the problem. But and I see this with dieters, over dieting, that is without fail, every single person are going to downregulate the thyroid. Remember, we talked about the HPTA axis, and this is going to be one of the signs and symptoms is chronic constipation. The reason why I said that it's not going to be relevant to people with IBD, because people with severe IBD and severe IBS, they're almost always going to have diarrhea, and they're not going to really have a scenario where they're actually constipated, because even though the thyroid hormonal pattern is going to be the same, so you have to really do a blood work to be able to see that. Anyway, that's a little bit probably too much information, but all right, number 7. We're almost done, guys. So number 7, silent symptom of undereating: you are always cold. You just cannot get warm. Okay. Caloric restriction is known to cause a drop in body temperature, okay? Thermal downregulation. So some calorie restriction proponents, suggest this is a sign of expected longevity. I don't think so. You're not going to prove that. No such thing. I don't believe so. It hasn't been proven yet, and I don't think you will. My clients, friends, family members, my own experience, has always shown that this is not a comfortable way to live on a daily basis. I used to compete, I used to diet, because before I knew what I was doing, I meant well, I ate healthy, truly healthy, but I was many times under eating for my size. I was not meeting my caloric requirements. I met my protein requirements very easily. Because being in strength sports and bodybuilding, that was something that I learned a long time ago, but I was still nonetheless under eating. And regardless of how much muscle mass I had and how much the fact that I live in Florida, my hands and feet are always cold. Especially if I walked into a room that was like 70, 75 degrees, I'll feel it within minutes. It got tired. It's just not comfortable to live like that. So that just it's a fact. So whether or not this extends our lifespan, I mean, who wants to be constantly walking around, feeling, cold in the hands and feet? I mean, they're just not. I don't buy that. The research is not really showing any significance with the whole, lower body temperature, lower caloric restriction. If anything, people will be living longer, because if you see people that are older, 70, 80s, 90s plus, they're always cold. So if that was the case, then, they shouldn't be, should be living a lot longer. That was a joke. So anyway, but a lower body temperature can definitely be due to a decrease in thermogenesis, since your body needs a certain amount of ingested calories to create heat, as well as due to the hormonal changes that come from caloric restriction. Remember, that it affects the thyroid, the HPT axis, right? So low insulin, for example, can also lead to low body temperature. So some people on a very low carbohydrate diet, who do not need to be on a very low carbohydrate diet, will experience these symptoms as well. So it may sound like a broken record, but if you're always cold, even in the summertime, a very good chance that you're not eating enough good quality calories that your body needs. And the last one here is you're losing your hair by the handful. So hair loss is one of the first signs of nutritional deficiencies. That is just a fact. Whether that be from calories, protein, micronutrients, both, it's always a fact. It is exacerbated severely by hormonal changes that will develop from the undereating scenario, including a drop in sex hormones like progesterone, testosterone, and estrogens. Hair loss is another common symptom of hypothyroidism. Okay, very common. Just like constipation, which is, if you learn, it can develop from long-term caloric restrictions. And two, you see, pay attention to, super fit women, especially the CrossFitters. Look at their facial structures and look at their hairlines and look at the hair. Now, these are girls in their early, mid-20s, maybe late 20s. As far as I know, the oldest one is like in their early 30s, very early 30s. Look at the male pattern baldness and the hair thinning that those people are experiencing. They perform excellent. They're very strong, powerful, fast, fit, across the board, and they look great. But look at their head. You're going to see that massive pattern. I promise. So that is just, it's a fact. When you start to over diet, restrict calories chronically, you're going to affect the thyroid, and you're going to create nutrition deficiencies along with just hypothyroidism, and the hair is going to start to fall fast at some points. So if you want to reverse that, address your calories. You have to make sure you're ingesting high quality protein, the right amount of calories, something good combination of healthy protein, carbs, and fats, throughout the day, and micronutrients. These are the trace minerals, the vitamins, minerals, nutrients, antioxidants that your body needs, and you can only get from a high, healthy, whole food based diet that is well balanced, nutritiously rich, organic, obviously, and with good supplementation. If you're deficient, I've never seen anybody be able to reverse, doesn't matter how healthy they eat, fully reverse micronutrient deficiency without proper supplementation. That is why proper supplementation is extremely important. It is extremely important. Even if you're eating organic, unless you grow your own food 100% of the time and you know your food and you have developed a healthy soil and you actually do testing of the mineral and the vitamin content of the soil and the food itself, which nobody does. It's cost prohibitive and time prohibitive. But unless you do that, which again, we don't, you are going to need proper supplementation. Okay. Thyroid, iodine, selenium, extremely important, and from food sources. But again, the thyroid, that could be another, webinar that we can talk about. So, how do you stop undereating and improving caloric intake? Well, that's a loaded question, and it's going to vary drastically on the situation of the person. Okay, so determining roughly, again, very roughly, how many calories you need on a daily basis for optimal health and weight control. Again, it's tricky. And many factors play into that, such as physical activity. Okay. Your lean body mass. That's a huge one. Okay. Somebody with my lean body mass as opposed to somebody with my wife's lean body mass, drastic difference in caloric requirements. The calories that I'm going to burn walking a mile as opposed to the same mile she walks with me with the same pace, her caloric expenditure is going to be drastically lower than what mine will be. Okay. So lean body mass, stress levels. Stress is huge. It's like you can think about your vehicle. You can drive your car in nice, cool, low humidity weather at a straight road, not speeding, going 50, 45, 50 miles an hour on the cruise control. You're going to spend a lot less gas. Take the same vehicle, the hot, humid weather, up on a hill, AC full blown, the car is fully loaded, you're revving that engine up going at 80 miles an hour, you're going to go to that gas twice as fast, probably. So same thing. So the stress is like, the more you rev up your life with, stress and chaos, the higher the caloric demand is going to be. Sleep adequacy, that is huge. That is absolutely huge. That's why I see people with, work shift disorder, night shift, graveyard shift people have a very, very high correlation with weight gain and morbid obesity. And that is because sleep deprivation is dead. Literally, one of the side effects is overeating. Okay, and not in good food either. My father suffered from that. He worked really bad hours for years and years on end, and I saw the toll that he took on him. So that's a big one. Your training intensity, volume, and frequency. Somebody going for a walk for 5 miles is a completely different animal than somebody doing, CrossFit 5 days a week for an hour, hour and a half at a time. Okay, you can't even come close to the comparison. So somebody might walk, 7 days a week, 5 miles a day, every day, this brisk walk. You don't even feel a comparison to what somebody's gonna, the same person, the caloric expenditure. So the training intensity, volume, and frequency are very, very important here to be calculated. History of chronic disease. People that are in chronic pain, have chronic issues. That also increases caloric intake because, again, that increases stress. There's other components to it, and then there's many other aspects. But these are the main ones that are the factors that are going to come into play immediately of your calculating caloric intake. So it's impossible to know exactly how many calories your body needs on a daily basis. But there are some ways, general ways, rough ways to estimate what that you should be eating, generally speaking. Personally, what I like to do and what I've done is use a backward calculation of calculating caloric need by actually first calculating the protein requirement of the person. And that has worked really well. Generally speaking, again, I'm not talking about somebody who's reversing chronic disease, has digestive issues or anything like that. We're talking about general health, fitness, in general health. I always have been a really big proponent of the 40-30-30 principle. 40, it can be 30 obviously, but 40% roughly your calories should be coming from high quality protein, 30 from good high quality, dense, low glycemic starches, carbohydrates, and about 30% of that from healthy fats. So 40% protein, 30% carbohydrates, 30% healthy fats. Vegetables that are non-starchy, I don't count because these you can eat as much as you want and you should eat as much as you can. Just a healthy principle nobody's going to argue with. But they don't have any calories really. Okay, so they have a lot of water, obviously a lot of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and a lot of fiber, which is extremely important for health. But they don't really have a lot of calories. That's why you can eat 3 pounds of celery and you're going to still, really is not going to count towards your caloric intake. But I always like that formula, and that generally speaking has worked really, really well. And I've used that for 27 years in my practice. That my wife and I had with virtually thousands of people. So how do you calculate that? That's a tough one to explain on camera, but basically here's the gist. You need to know your lean body mass. So that means you have to either do a hydrostatic weighing or go do a skin calibration test to be able to get a good idea of what is your general lean body mass. Okay. Now, how much you weigh is your lean body mass, because your fat is not metabolically that active as far as it comes to caloric intake. So you need to know your lean body mass. When you know your lean body mass, from there, you're going to use the either 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per day scenario. Okay. Protein is extremely important, especially as you age. People always ask, what's a good protein intake? 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per lean pound of body mass per day is a good way, especially if you're very active and especially if you train intensely with weights, okay, which weight training is very important for health and longevity down the long run. So you're going to take that, and from there, you're going to calculate the calories that are for protein. So in my case, my lean body mass is about 220 pounds. And if I do, 200, just say, keep that 200. So we have 200 grams of protein per day is my requirement. I multiply that times 4 calories per gram protein. So that's 800 calories per day is going to come from protein sources. For me, that's the 40%. So I know that this is 40% of my caloric intake. So I'll divide that by 0.4. So I know that, roughly my basic metabolic rate is going to be around, 2,200, 2,400 minimum, the requirement for me. So that's why I kind of come up with the calories. Hard to explain. I have actually an Excel spreadsheet here that I use. But generally speaking, 40-30-30 has really served a really good, rate of calculating your caloric, requirements. And once you find your protein, from there, you can go ahead and calculate what is 30% of your caloric intake for carbohydrates and 30% for healthy fats. And you can play with those ratios. Sometimes people like 40% carbohydrates, 25-30% fat, or 30-35% protein, whatever works for you. That's something you have to find. But generally speaking, this is how I like to calculate it. There are obviously calculators, that are out online. You can play with those and see. But ultimately, you're going to know. And if you eat, the rule is this: if you're going to eat healthy food, nutrient dense, healthy, organic, wholesome food, and not junk food, if you have a balanced meal, you have good healthy fats, starches, a lot of vegetables, and protein. If your meals are balanced, or at least throughout the day, the ratio is balanced, you're going to know if you haven't met your calories because you're still going to be hungry. You cannot overeat when you're eating healthy, nutrient, natural food. You just can't. Go ahead and try to eat 2 pounds of salad. It's not going to happen. Go ahead and try to eat 3 pounds of steak. Again, it's not going to happen. So when you feel satiated and full, your body's going to tell you. So try to use that natural born intuition to know that, hey, you know what? I've had enough. Now, make sure you're hydrated, because sometimes dehydration can mimic itself as hunger, obviously. But if you're eating 2-3 high-quality meals a day that are balanced really well, you're going to see the difference. I promise you that. And if you're hungry, eat more. If you want to put in a couple of snacks in between, again, with some wholesome snacks that I described above, do so. It's really that simple. You don't have to live with a calculator. You don't have to live with some kind of app or continuously go online and try to track every single thing down to the T. That to me, that's ridiculous and it's exhaustible compared. But just try to use your intuition and learn how to listen to your body. Your body will never deceive you, I promise you that. If you live by the natural health standards and rules, and you eat wholesome food, high nutrient dense food, your body's not gonna lie to you. You're gonna know when you had enough. Look how you sleep, look how you function, and just pay attention to your overall state of being. So with that being said, obviously calories can change throughout the day. If you have a very hard workout, my calories can literally double depending on the training day. I train twice a week with heavy weights, workouts at about 2 to 2.5 hours at a time. And during those days, I eat quite a bit more, and sometimes the day after, the half day after, I eat a little bit more because protein synthesis goes up a lot. It all depends on the intensity and the part of the cycle that I'm in training, but it can vary, but it can easily be sometimes double. Now, when we go on vacation, my caloric needs actually go drastically down because one, I'm relaxed, two, I usually don't move around a lot, relatively speaking, and I almost always don't really train when I'm on vacation. So use that to see. Your eating also easily will change a lot of times with the seasons. Okay, during long hot summer days, you're going to, generally speaking, eat a lot less, especially a lot less dense, calorically dense food. So it'll be more fruits, more vegetables, a lot more liquids, leaner proteins. As opposed to the cold winter, there's going to be high dense starches like root vegetables, more rice, with more fats, more dense protein, and so forth. So anyway, there's a lot we can talk about, but just remember, eating too little is just as unhealthy as eating too much. And find the right amount of food intake that works best for you, and don't be afraid to experiment. The only way you're going to know what is best for you is going to be when you experience. Follow the principles, follow the guidelines, but when you master those guidelines and principles, learn to listen to your body, and that's when you're going to come up top winning that game of caloric intake that everybody seems to be tripping about quite a bit, at least for the last 27 years that I've been around in this industry. So if you guys need any help with that, please reach out to us. That's what we're here for. If you need help determining, what is the best and optimal diet for you, for your specific needs, reach out to DrPND. Go on our website, fill out our forms. We do give a free consultation. We would love to talk to you and see if there's anything that we can do and help you with. I work with other practitioners as well that specialize. I have very high specialties. I'll also refer if need be. But take care of your health. The preservation of your health is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself and others. There's actually a quote that my wife came up with many years ago, and holds very true. So it was awesome catching up with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we're going to speak another topic here, hopefully next week, and become a little bit more regular on those topics. And we're going to have some fun getting healthy. Yeah, hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.